Hi, I'm Kelly Springer. I'm a registered dietitian and the owner of Kelly's Choice. So excited to share a soulful self-care conversation today.
Good to see you again. Had to walk out to let you back in. Stuck in a storm of a relationship. Lost my fire. Oh, and I forgot about me for way too long. But it's rolled on. Now there ain't no shame.
Hey everybody, it's Pearl Sorenzo with Women's Successful Living, and you are listening to our new and revamped Soulful Self-Care Conversations. If you joined us before, you might have been like, where's Conversations with Pearl? Well, we're still doing that, but we're just doing it differently and more focused on your self-care and really filling your soul and overflowing your cup with some amazing speakers that we have and guests. And today's no different. Today, we're going to dive into all things about nutrition and your health and how are you pouring into yourself. So I want to introduce you to my special guest today. Her name is Kelly Springer. She's an RD, MS, and CDN. She founded Kelly's Choice in 2012. A voice of authority and advocacy, Kelly is elevating the conversation around what it means to be truly healthy. And this is so needed. She has been a keynote speaker and a panelist at numerous conferences and workshops across the globe, captivating audiences, inspiring them with her expertise and enthusiasm. Her impact extends to national televisions with features on Good Morning America, Fox 5 Atlanta, and many others. Kelly also serves as a spokesperson for select health brands, raising their profile through a variety of media platforms, including television. She holds a bachelor's degree in nutrition from West Virginia University, right next door where I used to live in Virginia, and a master's degree in health education from SUNY Portland. So I'm so excited to have you join us today, Kelly. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. And thanks for that long introduction. Sorry for that.
It's okay. Oh my gosh, I've seen them longer. I've actually had to ask people, can we cut it down shorter? So no, and our journeys are so important. And I, long bio or not, like we have to have, good conversation. We need to know, I really want my guests to know who you are. And so absolutely. And you're an amazing person. And I remember we talked before, I just remember your energy. So I'm so excited to dive in today. And so those that are new to the show, like and subscribe below, and you're going to get an introduction of how we start off the show. We do a little different, nothing scripted here. So we will talk about anything that comes up, and we might even change the path a little bit, but we'll see what happens. However, I always love to start the show off talking about where was little Kelly at when she was younger? What was little Kelly looking to do as she grew up? Like that little girl, as she was playing with her Barbie dolls, or maybe she was a tomboy running outside playing sports. Like, what did Kelly want to be when she grew up? And what I think is really powerful is how it correlates to what you do today. And so for me, I wanted to be a teacher growing up. That was like my dream. I wanted to be a teacher, wanted to be an elementary school teacher, and had a great high school program where we could go and do things like if you wanted to do welding, mechanics, you would go to these companies. Because I wanted to be a teacher, I got to go to an elementary school. So I remember riding my little moped, going to help and help the teacher. And sometimes she would let me teach a class. And I unfortunately didn't have the best of guidance counselors. My parents didn't know the path for going in and getting a college degree. So I didn't go down that path. However, here I am today. I'm an amazing coach. I coach women who's challenged with understanding that no is a complete sentence. And when I joke with my friend the other day, we're chatting, I'm like, I feel like I'm probably coaching some of the women I would have taught in elementary school. So I actually have them now when they're older, right? So Kelly, tell us what little Kelly wanted to be when she grew up, and how does that relate to what you're doing today?
Well, I was definitely playing with Barbie dolls. That's for sure. I have 3 older brothers, and I was not a tomboy. Everyone always assumes that I was because of the boys, but I was a girly girl through and through. And I wanted to be a mom more than anything in the world, with my Barbies and my Cabbage Patch dolls and all of that. I always loved children. And my dad happens to be one of 12 children. So we had babies everywhere. I started babysitting actually at the age of 10. I also wanted to be a nurse. So once I realized that nursing meant you actually needed to go in the room and do all of those different things, I switched to dietitian, which is similar in the way of helping people and in the medical field. So it is funny of what we want to be and what we become. And I am a mother. I have 2 daughters of my own and 3 stepchildren, so 5 children. and I'm a dietitian. So it is interesting to see of who we are and who we've become. And it's now fun to watch the children grow up to see what they're going to become too.
It's so, I love that you share that because it's so true. And, I was the oldest, so I was only one of three or just three, but my husband's mom was a family of like, I think 16. So they had this big, big family. And I remember when little old me coming to this big family, and now they're like, I've been with my husband 40 years. So it's like, they're my family, it's an amazing, amazing group of people in their family, but all the dynamics and everything. And like you said, have, the older brothers. I remember growing up, I didn't really my people pleasing started coming in, excuse me, when I was like in the third grade because my mom had to have surgery. So my dad's like, you have to stay home and take care of your mom. And then when my dad was in the war, it was, I had to take care of my brothers and sisters. So people ask me all the time, what did you do when you were little? I'm like, I never played sports. I didn't, I remember we would be in upstate New York because back then, if your spouse went to war, you got kicked off a base. So we'd go to upstate New York and stay with my granny. And I have memories of my mom dropped me off to my friend up the street. We played Barbie dolls up there. But then after that, once my dad got out of the service, everything changed and it became very different. And if you listen to the show, you'll go back and listen to part of my story. But, I do get to say today that I love what I do. And like what you said, it's like, I wanted to be a mom too. And it's funny. I always, we always had that dream about the white picket fence, right? We grew up that way. Well, irony is, I did become a mom after 10 years of us trying. Our oldest was adopted and our youngest one came through in vitro. We moved from Virginia to Florida over 20 years ago, and we lived in this great property. We had an amazing amount of land. But then we downsized 4 years ago. And now I'm looking out my window right now and I have white picket fences in front of my house. In my husband's retired years. So it's so cool to have the conversation and see what we want to be when we grow up. I feel like, and if you listen to the show before everybody, you've heard me say, I feel like we come into this world and our path is laid out for us already. And if we listen and follow the path, it's going to be very rewarding. But sometimes we think we can divert off that path. And I think that correlates to our health. I know I struggle with my health especially when I was going through infertility because all the hormones and everything they put you on, it's like all these, up and down roller coaster stuff and emotion. I know I'm an emotional eater. So that struggle was very real for me. And so I would love for you to talk with us, like what brought you down that journey? Like, I know you've got some great expertise and you share it all over the world with everybody. So walk us through that journey and what inspired you to start getting the message out to everybody.
Well, Pearl, I have been on the same path, and I think I found my calling very, very early in life. I feel lucky for that because I know people struggle to find out what their passion is and what they truly love to do. And I jumped into this very early on. So I just said my dad's one of 12. The youngest sister was a dietitian. And I was able to see her use her degree in her home with the kids and then also have all these cool jobs. So I started right in the hospital in the teen years, pushing tray cards and passing out menus. I went right into my undergrad in nutrition at 17 years old and really truly have been in this field all through. And weirdly, now my 19-year-old daughter is on the same path. So it's kind of cool to see her coming up alongside of me. But I've always felt passionate about nutrition. Something very interesting about me that a lot of people don't know is that I absolutely hate to cook. I hate to cook. Okay, you're saying the same. So people are like, you're a dietitian now. And I'm like, no, I love eating. I love talking about food. I love inspiring people and being motivating. But I would rather scrub the floor and mow the front lawn than I would to cook. So I'm very, very fortunate. I have a Italian Russian husband who does all the cooking in the house, who even makes like sourdough bread and everything else. But we are a perfect pair because of that. So love sharing my message on nutrition and how everything can fit, but it all comes back to education. And so through presentations and one-on-one counseling, my work in media, my goal is to always educate who's ever on the other end.
I'm laughing for those who were, listening. If you're listening and you're not watching on YouTube, I'm laughing because it's like, oh, that's so me. I would rather clean my house and mop my
Yeah.
floors and go cook, right? And now I do, and the joke in the house is mom cooks the annual meals, like the Christmas and the Thanksgiving. Like I love doing that because, my love language is like pouring into others. And so for me, it's like, I love doing that, get my granny's recipes out and like pulling those stuff out. But the
Uh-huh.
rest of the year, it's like, oh my gosh, I have to, and my husband is Italian too, but he's completely Italian, 100% Italian. So he cooks. And then the joke was like when he would like cook back in the day when he would really do the sauces and everything. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to clean up after you. I don't like to cook. I don't want to clean up after a cook either. I'm like, I'm not your sous chef, but yeah, it's so true. Like I would like to eat the well cooked meals, but I don't
Mm.
want to do it. And even for me, like planning it sometimes, like for me, Kelly, was like overwhelming, it became like this overwhelming thing. And the funny thing is my journey for coaching, at one point when we moved here to Florida from Virginia, I was like, I've got to get, my health under control and everything. So I did go on this journey. I lost over 60 pounds. And for the most part, I've maintained that. But that educational part, the program that I coached and taught on, it was a very strict, no carbs, no fruit, no, basically it wasn't a Dr. Atkins diet, but something along those lines. And so one of the things that I found in doing that, and when I was coaching my clients, is that once you finish the program, it was hard to maintain that lifestyle. It was like, you know, I can't eat any fruits and, carbs, all this stuff. So I went on a path of going, okay, how can I help my clients like maintain what their loss has been without, so I went off the norm of what they taught us to coach on. I was like, okay, every Sunday became my I called it my safe day because I hated it. They would go, you get a cheat day once a week. I'm like, cheating sounds like so bad. It's like, like I'm doing something terrible, right? So I'd have every Sunday was our what I called my safe day. And I did it like I started late. My kids were, I think my oldest was probably in middle school. So my youngest was just at the end of elementary school when I really got my health journey on track. And so what we ended up doing, because I would tell the kids, okay, we have to have a safe day today. And the boys, like they played sports, they could eat whatever they wanted to. But I like, okay, so each Sunday, because there's 4 of us in the family, every Sunday was somebody's day to pick. What is mom cooking a safe day? So that also became the only day that I would cook something. But on my
Mhm.
day, we didn't cook. We had to go out to eat. I was like, I'm not cooking for me. It's my safe day pick. But, it became that journey. But then I realized like that was hard to maintain because all week long, you see these things, it's like in your head, you're like, I can't have that. I can't eat that. And it became all about the things I couldn't do. And so I found that to be a struggle. When I really started getting into the coaching and understanding, I started kind of, like I said, going off the norm of what they were teaching is the mindset part. Like why do I feel like I need to have that cupcake, or why do I need to feel like the fruit is good. I mean, I should be able to have fruit, right? So I totally went off the norm of that role, but it became that mindset piece. And so it's kind of what led me to expand my coaching to do more life coaching, because the owner of the clinic that I worked at, she had to go on vacation. So she'd put people on my calendar because I was always there for her. And I would sit down with somebody like, okay, so you had this that wasn't on the plan. Tell me what was happening. And what happened when she came back from vacation, they all wanted to go on my calendar because they'd go to see her and she'd be like, well, you should, you feel like you're going to the principal's office getting in trouble, right? And they're like, can I go on Pearl's calendar? And then one day she came and she just, why do they all want to be on your calendar? I'm like, I don't know. And we started talking about it. I'm like, well, I don't berate them for having something that's on the plan. I want them to understand that there's emotion behind your choice and your choice matters. And she's like, oh, so I ended up leaving there. And like I said, I started expanding my coaching business because some of those clients that I saw are of hers, they started referring people to me and they'd go, I want to go have coffee with your friend Pearl because I'm watching you start talking to me about emotion behind what your choices are. And they would say, hey, Pearl, my friend doesn't need to lose weight, but she so needs somebody to like help her in some choices she's making and mindset. And so after like probably a month or 2 of doing that, I was like, okay, I need to go. This is a sign from God. Again, talking, like we said earlier, that path that we're on. I really believe that my path was teaching, but it was just a different path. And so when you're working with your clients, like I love that you talk about your 19-year-old, like it's so cool that our kids start following some of the path that we do. I believe like my son, Matt, who before we started recording, I shared with Kelly. And if you don't know my story, we lost our son 2.5 years ago in a tragic car accident. But one of the things that he started doing was he was very athletic. He's like, Mom, I want to coach personal training. I'm like, okay, he saw that. My other son, Nate, who's 25 now, he's an amazing engineer, and he's got that technical mindset my husband has. So, but I think it's so cool that we inspire our kids that and it goes back to their watching us. So, talking about watching us, when you're working with your clients, what are some of the things you walk them through about watching what they're doing and how they're making their choices?
Well, we have put together over the past 9 years a program that is just so beautiful. Honestly, like it's a very generic term. We call it the transformation program. And it is a very generic term, but we've been able to transform lives. And how we walk people through is that we truly have to dive into nutrition education because no one has ever been taught nutrition education. And so we really dive into what are carbohydrates and how much to have, and what is fiber, what is protein, putting together mindful eating and meal planning. And it does take, in the 12-step program, it does take those 12 weeks to truly transform habits and staying with them so that they can come back each week and say, I just had my 2-year-old grandson's birthday, or it was just Valentine's Day or Super Bowl that just happened. So, there's always something that's going to kind of pop up. And so being able to see them week after week after week, the trust factor is there. The more that comes out, putting those practices into place, but it's not a one and done. Nutrition is very emotional. There's a lot of things tied to it. So a lot of that comes out over the 12 weeks. And again, that building of trust with the client and the clinician, and really helping them through that journey to learn about nutrition and how to put that forth in their diet plans.
And that's so true. And we're recording this like the week after, like it's not even a full week after the Super Bowl. It's so true. There's always something going on. There's always something. I mean, you can even I live in Florida. We had hurricanes. Last year we literally, no lie, I had my retreat that I do every year in September. So we had our 8th annual retreat last September. Came home preparing for my son's wedding, but before the wedding there was a hurricane. So there was something going on, right? It was always something's always happening in our lives. And you're right. And a lot of times it can be tied around food and things like that. And you were reminding me too, as you were saying something, there's always something going on. There's also things that happen in our life. Because I remember that was a one time when we lost Matthew. That was that one time that for me, I recognized my emotional eating was starting to pop up again. And it's just, there's so many emotions that come, with losing a loved one. And I often talk on the show about how there's no title for losing a child. You're a widower, you have all these different, you lost your mom.
No one wants that title.
No. And it's not a club I want anybody to be in with.
No.
Yeah. And so for me, the emotional eating was really showing up. And I was like, I think it was about 6 months later. I'm like, I just have to stop. Like, I have to take control and really get that back under control. And so I love that you're talking about like that 12 weeks and the mindfulness. I wrote down, the transformation is, it doesn't happen overnight, and that it's and having that 12 weeks, it's like when I coach with my clients, I tell them like, I want them, when we talk about mindfulness, I'm like, I want them to find their joy again. Oftentimes my clients come and they've lost joy in their life because they're doing so much for everybody else. They're like so stressed out. They don't sleep at night. They're eating bad, all these different things. And I'm like, we need to go back to what brings you joy. And they'll laugh at me because I tell them, you're going to give me 10 things. Like, oh, I can give you that. I'm like, no. It's going to take you 10 to 12 weeks to figure this out, because I want to know, we're going to break each thing down. And it goes back, like you said, like the creating habits. And I like too, the checking in, because we have to have some sort of accountability. Like we think we can do it on our own. And some people do great on their own, and kudos to you. I think it's amazing. But many of us need that accountability partner. Like even as a business owner, I have accountability partner, right? So we have to have that accountability. And it's, I remember like when I just did the weight loss program, they would be like, I would have to, we put them on the scale every week and to show them their success. And it was a scale that showed like their weight, their fat they lost, like everything. And it would do their inches too. And I remember oftentimes people would come in, I got on my scale and like getting on the scale every day. I'm like, give me that scale, bring me that scale, because it's not about the number on the scale and having that, like you said, that 12-week check-in and creating habits. And I think that's what we forget about often in our lives. We have to create habits to get us to where we want to go, to what that goal is and to succeed there. And so as your clients come in, they're creating these habits. What do you think some of the biggest hurdles that you see your clients struggle with making these changes in their life?
Again, I think it's education. So it's recently at a group, and there was a famous physician speaking. I won't see his name. And he said, people know how to eat healthy. They just choose not to. That is the most untrue statement that has ever come out of anyone's mouth. And I hear a lot of physicians say that. But I've been able to work with people from all walks of life, all ethnicities, all socioeconomic backgrounds. And when I tell you that the majority, 99% of people truly have no idea what fiber is, what it can do, how protein works, it's very confusing. And there's a lot of false news out there. So I think that is the hardest piece, is taking everything that they've learned and kind of relearning it the right way, or research based way, and how to implement that. So even, again, nutrition is emotional. It's tied to our backgrounds. And so it's something that their grandmother or mother did. So we're kind of teaching it in a way like, okay, it's not necessarily wrong, but this is where we can do better. So I think it's tough. I think the hardest part is that they've just never been educated. So
It's shame on that doctor. I don't know who that was, but I totally agree with you. It's like, no, it's like,
it was not Dr. Oz. One just as famous as that. But it was just happened. It was at my entrepreneur group in Atlanta on Friday. So I did not say anything. I bit my tongue, but I've heard that statement before, and it's not a true statement.
yeah, because I know, like, I remember when I first started the journey, like some of the things that I thought was like a protein, I'm like, oh, that's really not a protein. It's really more of a fat, and it has some protein value to it, but it's not a protein. And I know, like, right now, my husband's trying to be very, he just had both of his hips had surgery in the last like 2 months. He just had a second one, 5 weeks after the first one last weekend. And one of the things is, like, we're trying to make sure his sugar stays under control and everything. And so he tries to eat very low carb on everything. And he doesn't do a keto diet, but he loves cereal. So he's like very mindful of what kind of cereal he gets. And it's interesting because we read labels. Like, that's the one thing too, is I read labels. And it was so funny because he said to me, because normally he does the grocery shopping. And so like we were talking earlier, I would rather clean floors than go grocery shopping. And so he's so frustrated. He goes, I can't wait till I start walking again, because I order online from a store I won't mention, because I can go pull up and I'll put it in my car. The store he grocery shops, you can order online, but it's the most cumbersome way to order online. My time is valuable. I'm going here. So he's like, I can't wait till I can start walking and doing the groceries again. But he was like, get me this cereal. And I'm like, okay, try to find me. He wanted a keto cereal. I'm like, okay. So I'm reading the boxes and I'm like going, well, that says it's keto friendly. And as I pull it up and I'm reading, I'm like, there's so much stupid sugar in this. Like, it's like, and he'll go, well, why did you get that one? And I'll show him the label, and I do the carbs minus the fiber and get the net carbs. And I'm like, look how much sugar's in there. And he's like, wow, and I jokingly said to him, he wanted me to get this one. He goes, they swear it's keto friendly. And I took a picture. I did a FaceTime with him. I'm like, this is not safe for you. And in fact, I said, this is as bad as when I first went on my journey, like, 10, 12 years ago for my health journey. I remember, and it's actually longer than that because Nate's 25, but I remember when I used to give my oldest son, my youngest son was such a picky eater. I would just like, I'm just going to give you a Pop-Tart to go out the door, because I'm like, I can't get you to eat anything for breakfast. At least I get something in your stomach. And when I found out how much sugar was in a Pop-Tart one time, I'll never forget. Nate was sitting at the kitchen table, and I pulled out something. I made like an egg sandwich. I did like an egg white with on a really good healthy English muffin or something. He looked at me like I had three eyes. He's like, what am I going to do with that? And I said, okay, fine. I had already taken the equal amount of sugar that was in the Pop-Tarts I would give him, because he wanted the chocolate chip Pop-Tart for breakfast. So it was like eating a cookie, and I already had it in a Tupperware container. And I sat it in front of the egg sandwich, and I said, you can either choose to have this sugar. I'll put some warm water in for it and you can eat that because I'm not going to buy the Pop-Tart. And this is equal to what's in the Pop-Tart. And you can eat this egg sandwich. And that's how I got him to shift. He's like, I'm not going to eat all that sugar. And so that's how I did the shift. So when I was getting the cereal from my husband about 2 weeks ago, I said, do you remember the sugar exercise I did with Nate? He's like, yeah. I go, that's how much sugar is in this. And he's like, oh, don't buy it. It was so funny. Like, we don't think about like the education piece. I think we get so fixated on commercials and what they tell us and we want to believe is true. Just like the news. We watch the news, we think it's true, but when you start auditing it, it's not really all factual, right? So I think we get so fixated on that. And so when I'm thinking like when you're talking about educating the fibers, proteins, and things like that, what are some of the things that you see? Like, give us some examples. Like, what are some myths that you come across when it comes to like protein versus fats?
Well, one of the myths is, we talking about dairy. Okay. So dairy got this huge bad rap and everyone's like, it causes inflammation and this and that. Again, you're taking a whole huge category and not quite telling the whole truth. So, going back right before COVID, I was able to go over to India with Syracuse University and understand why the Hindu religion praises a cow. I never understood until being there the reason why they praise the cow is for the dairy. There's so many people to feed, and they knew that the nutrition from the dairy would feed way more than killing a cow and feeding them. So interesting. But we've been truly consuming dairy products for centuries, from the start of time, basically. And what they would do is the cow would be milked and the fat would rise to the top. They'd skim off the top and they would use that for whipping creams and butters or for ghee. And then we would have this skimmed milk, right? So now in today's society, we take milk, we actually separate the fat out, and all the milk is fat free to begin with. And then we actually push in fat for the homogenized portion. And so no one was drinking homogenized whole milk all of these centuries. So we're, again, probably getting too much saturated fat, which can cause inflammation, but it's not the dairy that's giving you a good protein source and calcium and nutrients and vitamins and all of that. So that's like one myth that's out there. Another one has to do with eggs. So eggs have gone back and forth, good, bad, where do they fall? Well, they used to think that the cholesterol that's in eggs cause your cholesterol to rise, which again is not the whole story. If you already have inflammation in your body, you're going to have a higher cholesterol level. Eating the egg, if you're in natural, homeostasis, your liver will actually produce less cholesterol. So by eating the egg, the body knows and will regulate itself. But when we're all out of whack with all of the sugar and inflammation and everything, this is the problem. The egg is not the issue. So see how it's like things are pulled out and highlighted, but they're not necessarily the whole story.
Yeah, that's such a great example, especially on the eggs part. Because I remember when my husband years ago, he did the Atkins diet. He's like having all these eggs, and his doctor's like, "Oh, you're eating too many eggs. Your cholesterol's got to go up." And he's like, "Doc, my cholesterol's come down." Like, it was just to the opposite. But it was a whole journey of us doing that with them. And in fact, recently we did something over vitamins. I have a vitamin line that I love that I use for us. It's called isotonics, and so I love it because you can drink it. And so he was doing really well on it, and all of a sudden he goes, I read the label and there's a ton of sugar. I'm like, Charles, it has the amount of a sugar from a grape in this, like one grape. I'm like, I'm talking about one grape, like you're eating one grape. It's not like you're eating 20 grapes, And so he decided he was going to stop doing it. And I'm like, okay, fine, you stop taking it, and his inflammation started popping back up. He was tired and he wasn't feeling well. So he's going to the doctor. So we see the husband and wife team. He sees the wife. I see the husband. And so I'm like, I'm going to go with you to see the doctor today. I'm not going to say their names because I love them to death. So we go in and he sits down and I say, Doctor, Chuck stopped taking the vitamins. Can you please talk to him about the vitamins, how important the vitamins are? And she looked at me and she said, well, I don't really believe in vitamins. So I was like going, oh, I'm like, I've got a big fight here, right? So I knew where that was going. I'm like, okay, fine. Where when I go to the husband, I go in, I'm like, and I've taught my boys this early on. I have control over my health. I'm like, I want you to check this, this, and this, and this when you do my blood work. I'm like, I want my all 4 levels of my thyroid check. I want, my vitamin D, B, all that stuff check. And then I do thermography. I don't do mammography. So I go get a thermography gram every like 6 months. And so I go into him, all the time. Well, one time we come home from the vitamins, like, see, I'm not going to do the vitamins. Like, okay, fine. You keep this path along. So all of a sudden he's like, I think I want to take the vitamins. I got to go, oh, might feel a little better, huh? And then now here we are, we've had the surgeries, right? And I'm like, we're going to double up in your vitamins. You're going to take them in the morning and take them at night. It's going to help with your recovery. And he's like, okay. So the first hip surgery, he was doing really well on it. Now this one we just had, it's only 3 days in. I'm like, you haven't been doubling up on your vitamins. And this morning he said to me, I need to double up on the vitamins. I go, see, those things help. Like picking, having the things that are important to your health and doing it is so important is what I talk with him about. So, full circle, I have to go see the wife one time because I don't feel good. And you're talking about cholesterol and things like that. So I go in and she's like, well, one of these numbers on here don't look so great for you. And I looked at her, she goes, oh, you're not going to let me give you a prescription, are you? You're going to talk to my husband, aren't you? Like, yes, doc, I have to talk to your hubby. I'm sorry. So about a couple of weeks later, I went in to see him for a follow-up and he's like, so I have to tell you, you were a conversation at dinner table last week. I was like, and he said about taking control of your health. He goes, Pearl, there's nothing wrong with it. And he's like, listen, I let you get away with this for long enough. You have to take this vitamin. Okay, fine. I go, the thing for me with saying all that is that I want, and I know this is what you're talking about too. We're talking about is take control. Like we have choices and make the choices that's best for you. And like the transformation, like having guidance, having somebody like you to guide along is really important. And I love what you're doing. And so my other question I have for you is like, so you talk about some of the myths, the dairy and things like that. So with those myths, like when you start working with your clients, you're taking through this transformation, this 12-week journey. How do you help those ones like they're so stubborn? I mean, we all come across that. I have it in my life coaching. I actually have to fire clients sometimes because they're like, they want to fight me. I'm like, I can't help you till you make the choice, right? So how do you help that client that says, I don't believe you. I don't believe that part. I still want to do this. How do you help them get past that? A lot of times it's just that mind block, that mental block of going, this is what I've heard all the time in the news. It's all playing in the back of their mind. But now you're helping them understand that it's a little different than back then. How do you help them do that?
Well, I think what you touched on was choice. The name of my company is Kelly's Choice. Nutrition is a choice. And they have the full right. And this is where, we have people coming into us from all angles, from keto to vegan. I mean, we have the full gamut. And people, we really just want them to get to the healthier choice. So whatever that looks like for them, making simple changes, they don't have to change everything. But what does that health goal look like for them? And then helping them lead that to it. So, I'm going to be putting together actually like a sensitivity training for my dietitians because I want them to, because when I first started in nutrition, of course, you want to get the information and you're so passionate, whatever. But what I've learned over doing private practice for 20 years is exactly what I just said. Where are we reaching people? Where are they at? What are we likely to change? And what is their philosophy around this? So I think it's different depending on the person. I really do. I don't think there's a one size fits all situation.
I'm glad you said that. It's so true. It goes back to what I said about, when I was working on some of the clients for that at the clinic, it really is. We all look at it differently and there's not one thing that doesn't fit everybody. And to know that you have some flexibility and like, if I can change one thing in your life today, when I sit down with a client, what's that one thing that you need to work on? It's like, okay, let's start there. Let's start with that one thing. And it's going to look different for each person. I'm glad that you said that. I'm glad like the sensitivity training and everything like that. I think that's so, so important because everybody doesn't receive the information the same way either, and I mean,
No.
Yeah.
And I've been guilty. I remember this one time this lady reached out to me after the visit, and it really was kind of the aha moment. We had just started with Zoom. It was right after COVID. And I was just like, I knew her, right? Like I knew what she was coming in for. She'd been like hundreds of other women the same age, same thing. And so I dove into the nutrition, and her feedback was, you didn't really listen to me to begin with. And I ended up, it was before insurance reimbursement. So I ended up reimbursing her all her money. And I said, I really learned from that because I knew her, I had seen her, but I didn't let her tell her story. I didn't let her share about her and her personal journey. And I think that, as dietitians, we're just so excited to get the information to them that it is important to understand where they are and what they want to learn and just, listening to them to begin with.
That's so powerful. And that says a lot about who you are and your background. And because and I think that's really amazing that you saw that and you reached out like to reimburse because it's
Mhm.
important that they know that, that we care and we listen. And, I sat down with a client yesterday. We went and had lunch and we're talking about like she came to one of my first retreats a few years ago and she's sharing about some things that she wanted and how her husband wasn't like hearing her. And when we walked through it, it was like, it wasn't that he wasn't hearing. It was like his love language was a little different than what she was understanding. And once we started working through that, she's like, oh, so she was able to go back and speak to, his concerns and where his love language was. And so she was like, I'm so glad you listened to me and you taught me to listen to him and understand. And ironically, yesterday we go to lunch. I mean, she's been, I think it was 5 years ago, she came to my first retreat when this happened. And she's like, I'm, kind of like, remember when I first came? And I'm like, okay, let's revisit now. Cause we get comfortable sometimes. I think too, that we do
Yeah.
that kind of check in. I'm like, let's revisit now. Remember, this is his, take on things. She's like, oh, and she just sent me a message this morning before we hopped on. She's like, thank you so much for the reminders. I really love that you helped me walk through that. And that's so rewarding. But I have myself where it's been like I've let a client go because it's not going to help me help her if she can't make the choices, and sure, I would love to help and coach her and, but I don't want to be that person that's going to be like, I'm going to take funds from you when you don't want to do the work. Cause until you're ready to do the work, it's no sense in us working together, but to listen. And one of the questions I ask often, Kelly, when somebody comes to work with me and I know they work with somebody else, I ask them like, why me? And so this leads to my next question for you. The why me often is they'll tell me, I worked with this other coach. They coached me on XYZ. But when I looked at their life online, because they go check us out online, they see what we're doing. That's what we're all about these days, right? And I'm the biggest detective there is. But they're like, when I look at you, you're honest. You put it on Facebook, you put it on social media. You're honest about your emotions, where you're at, and everything. That's what I want to work with. Somebody who understands that the emotion is behind everything. And I'm like, well, I don't want to be the imposter syndrome. That's not who I am. And so I want to know, like, with you, when living your life, you've come this way and, you, like you said, your sister, you've done this for a really long time. What are some of the struggles you find sometimes today in your health and wellness that you struggle with that you have to kind of give yourself that check and balance on?
Well, I think every single time I get to deliver education, I am again reminding myself. So I kind of have a win-win job, I guess, because like I just delivered a presentation right before this on cancer prevention. And again, it's just like that remembrance of drinking water and getting fruits and vegetables. And so I'm saying it out loud, and I do need to be, doing what I say, and I think right now the hardest part for me is winter. I am in central New York and getting out and being active is difficult. I have a hard time with winters, and I've lived here the majority of my life, and I'm hoping at some point in my life to be able to visit winter and not live in winter. But I realize that for a lot of my clients too, that It's harder for sure. It's darker, it's cold, the sidewalks are icy. And so how do I get exercise? What's going to make me do it? How do I get like you said, a kind of a partner who's going to be my accountability partner, which is like my next door neighbor. But it's a struggle for me this time of year to make sure that I'm getting that movement in.
It's so funny to talk about winter. I remember that living in Virginia. Winters was always hard for me. It's like it's so cold. Like I didn't want to go outside. And 2 weekends ago, I was up visiting a client. She was holding her first event on RA, and I wanted to go help her and support her. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm here. We're gonna do. I had a coaching session I've been wanting to do with her, but I was wanting to wait till we were in person. And so she's in Pennsylvania, and I'm in Florida, and we're up there. And the whole time it was like so cold and everything. And I'm like, we have to do this thing outside, and I have my winter coat, so let's go outside. So it's like, but it was so invigorating to do it outside, especially in the cold. The process we took her through a process of like putting all negative thoughts into this jar and just feeding this glass jar and letting it go and everything. And so you're right, winters for me, I remember those were
Yeah, it's but I'm really trying. I've been skiing and trying to get through it, but and again, a lot of our clients come from this area. So it's something that we do have to discuss when we're on the phone of like, how do you get through it? Because we're all in it together up here.
I remember when I'd go visit my mother-in-law in New York, I would talk to her. They were from Niagara Falls area. And she's like, we're going to go walk the mall in the wintertime. Like, that's a great idea. That, I never thought about that when I was, of course I was working full time, but I never thought what a cool idea to be like, go walk the mall. And, at least you're getting outside and you're walking. So I love that. So Kelly, I know I just looked at our time has flown by. I would love to know, we talk about soulful self-care and, of course, nutrition is all about self-care and taking care of ourselves. But will you share with the listeners, what's one of your favorite things to do for self-care?
I am very fortunate in our little teeny town of Skinny Atlas, New York. We have a beautiful spa that the local residents can have membership to. And so getting together with girlfriends and going up there, it is truly very special that we have that right in our area. So just on Sunday morning, I went with a friend and took 2 hours of my day to be with her and work out and sit in the sauna and talk and chat. But I think really good girlfriend time is important. I do. I think that keeping those girlfriend relationships up in the way of walking or being together, having a glass of wine. I think that those are really important for self-care for me.
I love that. I love going to have spa days with my girlfriends and stuff. That's so much fun. I want us to talk to a second to the mom that's listening to us right now that has, 3 or more kids or just has kids at home. Is like, how the heck do I balance self-care? I remember when I really went on this journey of overcoming people pleasing, I realized I was doing so much for everybody else. And then I had to figure out, how do I take care of myself? And part of that self-care too was figuring out, how do I have self-care with my kids? And so one of the things I would do with my son, Matthew, he was a big football player and he had football feet. So we would go and we would I would do Manny and Petties with us together. And it was so much fun because that was an opportunity for us to talk about anything and everything. Like we would talk about girls and everything. And our nail tech, she would laugh at us because we would talk about sex. We'd talk about, wearing protection. She would just chat. If I ever went in by myself, she's like, I love when you guys come in because I just think it's so cool that you just have these conversations with them. And then my other son, it's about, going to the movies and spending that time. Oftentimes we think that self-care is selfish. So you being a mom, looking back, what are some of the things that you did for self-care for yourself that you incorporate your kids into?
Well, I think, again, I'm big on this movement and getting out. So I took my kids swimming and skiing, and we went to sporting events and apple picking and, doing all of these events together. And that always felt like self-care because they were the happiest. And I was too, when we were all having fun together. So that's something as a young mom. And now, because I put in the work and I really did enjoy it with them, they're now doing those activities with me as adults. So we've gotten back in the pool together. We're skiing together. We're doing triathlons together. So I think it's really neat they're choosing to be with me now in those adult years because we kind of laid that groundwork. And that is self-care. That is something that makes us happy and gets out our emotions. And we eat better, we sleep better when we have that activity. But it's kind of cool that we're doing it now as adults.
I love that. So for the young moms that are listening, it does come full circle. I promise you, because even for me, like Matthew loves sushi. So we would start going out for lunch for sushi. And so when he moved out of the house, he would call me, Mom, can we go for sushi? I knew that meant he wanted to have a conversation, not just hang out with me, but let's have a conversation. And Nate, to this day, it's like, can we go to the movies? Or like he has his chiropractors over here him and his wife have a house now. So when he comes over this way, he'll stop by and have lunch with Chuck and I at the house or whatever. So it does come full circle if you're listening to us. So I'm thank you for that reminder. So, okay. So tell me how they can reach you. We're going to put everything in the show notes. So if you're driving and you can't write this down, look for the show notes, but tell me how they can reach you. And if you have anything you want to give away, share that as well.
Oh, sure. So kellyschoice.org is the website that you can go to book a dietitian. We take insurance, just so everybody is aware. Almost all of our services can be covered by major insurance, which is huge. You can follow us on Instagram at Kelly's Choice _nutrition. Our book just came out on Amazon. So if you search Kelly Springer or the New Weight Loss Era, you'll be able to find our book right on Amazon. So really appreciate this opportunity to have this time with you.
Congratulations on the book. That's amazing. We have one that's launching. So be listening to us too, Kelly. We have one that's launching on International Women's Day. It's my first book I'm doing on my own. It's a kind of a workbook as well. So I'm really excited. So it's always fun to have new books out. So I'm going to go look for that book myself too. But I just want to thank you so much for coming on. And before we let Kelly go, we did let her know we still do our cards on the episode. So we're going to shuffle the cards, Kelly. You'll tell me when to stop. And then we'll have you answer the card. So here we go. Just tell me when to stop.
Stop.
Okay. Your card says, who can I forgive today?
Ooh.
I didn't say they're going to be easy.
Well, something happened that was pretty funny yesterday. So my daughter, who's in college at Ole Miss, she decided that she was going to go to the dentist down there. And I said, don't do it. They're going to, wait till you get home because I know what happens. She walked out yesterday with a $730 bill. She got completely taken, which I knew was going to happen. And I'm truly forgiving you, Ellie. It is a life lesson. And she will always learn. I fully forgive you, honey. and we all learn together.
Oh my God, that's so fun. They do those lessons pretty easy on. So that's a great example. So I'm glad you're forgiving her today. So she won't do that again, I'm sure. See, moms do know something sometimes, you guys.
I know.
Oh my gosh. Well, I want to thank you for coming. And I want to remind everybody that's listening today that we've come into this world. We are a rough oyster on the outside. We have some work to do to really dive into our self-care, to dive into taking care of our bodies, including nutrition, like we've talked today. But when you do, you will find that inside you have this beautiful pearl within. And I hope today you go out, find your inner pearl of greatness, and have an amazing day. Oh my gosh, that was so much fun, you guys. I love talking about nutrition. It kind of brings me back to my days of when I just did health and wellness. And it was so fun to reminisce on some of that and some of the myths that Kelly shared with us. And so I just want to remind you, she's right. It is a choice. It's your choice of what you want to do for your self-care, your choice of how you want to pour into yourself. I just want you to make the choice that you are always overflowing your cup. Not just filling your cup, but how are you overflowing your cup? How are you pouring into yourself? If that's an area you struggle with, if that's something you're like, Pearl, I don't even know where to start. I have got so much going on that people are pulling me here and there. I just want you to follow the link below, like and share, reach out to us, and just book a free 30-minute roadmap call. Let me help you with some tools and steps to get started. And if nothing else, go to our website, wsliving.com. and download our free ebook to 5 Steps to Finding Harmony in Your Life. I hope you have an amazing day, and thank you for listening.
Why'd it take so long?